know your limits, but also realize that you can push your limits even further. Don't be afraid to, it's one thing to be able to have a vision and an idea, but it's another thing to believe that you're actually capable of accomplishing that.
Hello and welcome to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds Podcast, brought to you by Advanced Services, Fuse Networks, and our newest sponsor, Warrior Injury Law. We're coming at you from the underbelly of the Creative Block Studios in Seattle, Washington. So Joe, for new listeners and our audience out there, can you tell everyone how our podcast came to be?
Sure. So it first started out as a private Facebook group page. The purpose was to bring just business owners together into the platform to ask questions, share tips, help each other out in their businesses. Because we are a marketing company, we get asked a lot of questions outside of just marketing. So in a selfish way, we wanted to bring on different guests, different entrepreneurs to talk about all topics relevant to being in business.
All right. So entrepreneurs inspire other entrepreneurs.
There you go.
We have a serial entrepreneur in the building. Joe, can you formally introduce our guest, please?
Sure. This is everyone. This is Noah. Noah has, 4 companies now? Why don't you do us a solid and introduce yourself to our audience?
Oh man, if you want to talk about all the things I've got going on, I've got diesel repair, supercrosssuites.com, building a mini golf entertainment center, Kitsap luxury bathrooms, and the list just goes on, yes.
So from mobile diesel repair to entertainment, we'll get into it and getting to know Noah and kind of share some tips and insight to other entrepreneurs, our audience and everything. But before we do that, we'd like to get to know you a little bit more. So Joe, first question, please.
What is one thing you learned about yourself last year?
Last year, that there is some point where you burn out in business as an entrepreneur, especially when you're trying to create so much.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Does that include getting married? Throwing that in the mix?
I guess the other part of that is the burnout line is a lot further out than you think it is. So you can keep going, keep trying, keep working, yes.
So on your entrepreneurial journey, you're starting and still going. What is the best piece of advice that you've been given?
I think the best piece of advice is know your limits, but also realize that you can push your limits even further. Don't be afraid to... It's one thing to be able to have a vision and an idea, but it's another thing to believe that you're actually capable of accomplishing that.
That's awesome.
So,
Nice.
yeah, keep
And
believing in
lastly,
yourself.
why is marketing important?
You know, a lot of the things that I've been working on, whether it was the diesel repair, which I've been doing for almost 8 years now, but some of the new projects like supercrosssuites.com, it's a new idea that people aren't used to. And without the marketing, you know, people may not be looking for me to begin with, but if I can get in front of them with marketing, then now they can see a new concept that they're not used to seeing.
Right. Which is a good segue into our Advanced Services Pump You Up quote of the day. So I'll read this quote that Noah came up with and get his thought on it. But if the world around you is created by people, why can't you be the person creating the world? So
Exactly.
As a serial entrepreneur, why does that mean so much to you?
Well, you know, if you think of something like Steve Jobs and Apple, he had this project, this idea, these products, and look at how the world has drastically changed because of what he's done, right? The light bulb, electricity, shoes, tumblers, all these things where some person had an idea, whether they were crazy or not. I was watching a documentary about how lollipops were created and how it was just such a wild concept to do something like that. And, you know, somebody poured in the time, the money, the energy, the effort, the risk, and created, you know, lollipops are everywhere. It's just a common thing. But somebody had to say, I like this idea. I'm going to create this and make it mainstream. Part of it was for money, but part of it was for I can change the way people experience life. And if they can do it, why can't you?
So for you, what has been, I mean, you've created different businesses that aren't all the same. How do those ideas come into your head, come to fruition? What made you go into those businesses?
Yeah, that's a loaded question. So I guess let's start from the beginning. Diesel repair. It was a job that I had, and it was kind of like a expansion of where I was as a young guy. I was, in my early 20s, 21, 22, and I got a job for a lady, for a girlfriend at the time, so I could move to her city, and that was at a tractor dealership. When I was there, I just happened to go from like riding mowers into diesel and tractors. Got dropped on my lap. They didn't have anybody else to do it. And from that moment on, I realized, one, nuts and bolts are nuts and bolts no matter what it's on. And there was, as a category, diesel and equipment, like everybody thinks of auto repair mechanics,
right,
but they don't think of like diesel repair mechanics. And it's weird when I meet mechanics that are into cars, but they're like, oh, I can't do tractors. Oh no, that's not my thing. And I'm like, okay, it's the same thing. And if you realize that it's not that bad, the market's so huge, right, and there's not enough people fixing that stuff. And then, so that was like, at the time it was, I don't want to work my day job. I'm tired of having bosses that don't respect me and that I can't respect them. And then, but I have tools and knowledge, so I guess I might as well go throw myself into this market. And now I've done, I think last I looked, it was like 1.6 or 7 million in invoices since I started at 23, just out of the backseat of my pickup truck. Right. And that has had all sorts of, highs and lows of business. And then the entertainment businesses were really one that was during COVID, I was bored and I was like, well, I want to do these things, and the places that exist are not open because of COVID rules, so I'm just going to make it myself. Right. And then other ones, the luxury bathroom business, I was getting married and having a wedding, and I said, well, if I can buy it instead of rent it, then I can rent it out and it'll pay me for my wedding. So over time, theoretically, that will make my wedding cheap or free, right, or I'll get paid to get married, which is kind of a funny concept. And then supercrosssuites.com, that was something I'm already doing, but how do I monetize it so I can have the experience and everybody else is paying for it, through, run it through the business. And then I think that, and then the entertainment center, which we'll get to, the mini golf, that is just looking at, I don't want to keep driving over to Seattle or Tacoma or far away to go do something fun. And if I've got that problem, most likely other people do too. Right. Mm-hmm. And so if I can monetize that, I can get paid for solving everybody's problems, which is creating entertainment options.
So find a pain point, address the pain point.
Yeah, find a pain point, address it. That's a simple way of putting it. Yeah,
yeah, there you go.
That's a quick way.
So now we have our Fuse Network's Did You Know segment.
Millions of cyber criminals are out there on a daily basis trying to steal your information. It's not a matter of if, it's when. Small businesses account for 58% of cyber attacks annually. So help your company fight cybercrime and mitigate risk by being proactive. Call Fuse Networks, your local Seattle IT experts at 206-701-6040 for a complimentary IT network and security assessment.
So the entertainment space is obviously, since COVID, when COVID, everything shut down, and now people want to do things, and like I said, not drive all the way to Seattle or further places. Joe, can you read this stat, please?
As of 2024, there were 6,217 arcade, food, and entertainment complexes in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
So this next one,
goes
can you
into
read
dollars.
that one too, please?
Yeah. The family indoor entertainment center market size has grown rapidly in recent years. It will grow from $35.24 billion in 2024 to over $40 billion in 2025 at a compound annual rate growth of 14.2%. Did you know that before you got into the market?
Nope. I kind of figured no matter what the economics of it were, I knew that there's, in our area over in Kitsap, there's tens of thousands of people and families and kids and grandkids and grandparents that have nothing to do. So regardless of what the United States market was, I have a wide open market to conquer here locally. Mm-hmm. So I just kind of figured, I knew that
has relatively not a lot of competition.
Has very little. You got things like Chuck E. Cheese, no offense to them, but I don't know anybody that likes to go to Chuck E. Cheese. And then a couple smelly old 1980s bowling alleys. No offense to those guys, they're working hard. But, there's not much innovation going on around us. And then you got things like trampoline parks. That's a big craze, right? But I don't know, like my knees hurt just thinking about going to a trampoline park, so I don't want to go do that, right? I don't think grandma does either.
Right.
So I think finding things that I could fill in the gap that maybe are a little less flashy and less, the trampoline park's cool, but not many people have $2 million to build a trampoline park. And then you've got the injuries, the lawsuits, the liabilities and stuff like that. Yes. And it's very interesting looking at kind of the reports of those kind of businesses and then wondering like, well, what would it look like if I wanted to own a trampoline park or a go-kart racing facility or something? And you kind of learn a lot by just looking at what other people are doing. Do I want to own a Dave & Buster's or some $5 million construction project? Yeah. It's crazy.
So tell us about the entertainment complex that you're envisioning or that you will build. Who is your target audience? I know, you mentioned some of it, but as a business owner, how do you attack bringing something to market and then going after that?
So I think if you can create a place that has amenities that are very age neutral, you can have your 2-year-old kid smacking a little golf ball around, but then again, grandma and grandpa can go too, and they're not going to get themselves in too much trouble. You can also set those hours to where maybe on a weekend after 9 p.m., 9 to midnight is 21 and up only. And other than that, in our area, we just have local dive bars that everybody goes to. So you're either just drinking and talking or getting in a fight in a parking lot, which you might as well go on a date and play mini golf and arcade games and stuff like that. So that's
for that business model. I know the entertainment venues, you mentioned like food. I mean, if you're going to be there, you're going to eat and drink. So eat and play also. I mean, that's the Chuck E. Cheese model, the Dave & Buster's model.
Yes.
I assume for you as well, right? I mean, if you're going to cater to not only the kids' parties with pizza parties, copying the Chuck E. Cheese segment, but the adult segment. So, grandkid is having a Sprite and then granddad's having an IPA, doing the same activity, right? So,
right. Yeah, what's interesting about my situation is where I'm building or trying to build right now, which has been kind of an up and down cycle. My next door neighbor is actually a brewery, and because they're manufacturing, it's open age, so there's no restriction. So you can have kids next door playing mini golf, parents next door having some drinks, and the kids can come by and there's no restriction with that versus like a bar, right?
Or you need the liquor license.
Stuff like that. And because liquor licenses like beer and wine can be a lot easier to get than a full-blown bar license, and so we would incorporate some of that stuff, but I wouldn't want a bunch of like alcohol and IPAs and stuff like everywhere during like kids' birthday parties, because then there could be, things can get out of hand quick if you're not monitoring it. But when you have that after hours and maybe even like a business partnership with the people next door that already have the equipment, the alcohol, the licenses, the staff, make some sort of partnership where we can help each other out, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So for you creating all these businesses and specifically like this, the entertainment space, what's that moment that gives you the greatest joy in each of your businesses? Is it, I have an idea, I'm going to bring it to the community, or is it further along where you hit a certain benchmark? You've obviously been successful in launching different businesses.
Yes.
Well, for you, what's that like yes moment, the fist bump moment where you like bring it home kind of thing?
Well, I have fist pump moments all along the way, whether it's like financially successful or not. So, in diesel repair, for example, that was just like a fist pump moment. Like, wow, somebody actually paid an invoice and called me to their house, and I made money doing it.
Right.
Making it to 7 years, that's a fist pump moment. So in specifically the entertainment centers, the mini golf thing, that was a pen and paper idea, and it was like, okay, what if I did this? And then I said, okay, well, let me grab a notepad and draw out like this big $2 million project. And then going backwards, to like $350,000 startup, and then being able to pull the trigger and have a plan that's executed at a quarter of that and go, whoa, no, like I'm actually making traction. I've bought equipment. I've signed a lease on a space, and I'm half of what I originally thought, which was 1/10 of where I started.
Yeah.
Right.
And it's possible. That was a fist pump moment. Yeah.
Heather, have you ever tried to start a business that either didn't take off or failed?
So before I answer that question, the first thing that popped into my head was I probably got like a 10% success rate, but that's good, because if you can't have ideas and build things and go, hey, you know what? I can see a writing on the wall or a line in the sand, and I'm gonna make good judgment call here and say I shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
If you can't do that, you're gonna just fall into it. You're gonna fall down the canyon and get stuck more times than you can.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes you can only fall down the canyon once before you're dead, right? So
Right.
if you gotta know when to say no and when to say yes.
Or you're a great faller.
Yes,
You just know
yeah.
how to fall, right?
That's another one, yeah.
I mean, that's a skill.
If you can't build the parachute on the way down and you survive,
Don't die trying.
don't die twice, right? Don't try it twice.
So really the fail forward would be a good model.
Just
for you,
fail
right?
forward, yeah. Everything that I've started and failed at, my guy Nikolai that does all the branding, the screen printing, he's done business plans with me. He's done so much stuff with me, and I've known him since middle of high school.
Yeah.
He has been involved in every single business and idea up till today. And I was just texting him 5 minutes ago about things that he's doing for our businesses. And he has seen more projects get started and, hit brick walls and fall off, but he's also seen projects succeed like diesel repair. And he's also been integral in parts of the entertainment businesses. And even hard questions like, do we pull it, do we keep going, do we put it on the shelf for now? So yeah, you have to have some amount of tough skin to believe that, okay, well, maybe it's not working for right now, but let's just revisit it when we can put our brains together. Yeah.
So to our audience right now, we have probably some serial entrepreneurs that will watch this. I want you to talk to them, and what are 2 or 3 things that you could share with fellow entrepreneurs or serial entrepreneurs about your journey? Are there tips, or if it's the failing forward or different things, what can you tell them about ideas they have? Maybe they're incubating, it hasn't come to fruition yet, but are there 2 or 3 things you could tell fellow people like you of, all right, stay the course, or things you could share?
Well, I'd say number 1 is don't overlook shaking hands and asking questions. So I've asked a ton of hard questions to people. I remember, when I was young, I just thought there's people that are successful and have everything, and then there's people like me that don't have anything and are just, new and dumb, right? But
you're not dumb, you just don't know yet.
Exactly. That's what I learned.
And you're still young, by the way.
Yes.
So you're not
right. So
really old.
now that I'm up here, I'm 10 years forward, I can look back and think wow, if I only would have just believed in the reality of things, which is everybody starts somewhere, everybody fails, everybody has to learn something from someone.
Right.
The people that are the best at making shoes, for example, somebody else is learning how to make their first shoe.
Yeah.
And if they just ask the person, hey man, you've made 10 million shoes and everybody knows you're the best, can you give me some guidance? Even if it's just, hey, go watch my YouTube videos, I put a bunch of information, see you later, and you never talk to them again. Yeah. That little tidbit could put you into a whole nother category.
Right.
That could put you to a whole nother level you never experienced before. So that's 1. Number 2 is one of my greatest mentors, his name's Lan Taylor, so hopefully he sees this podcast someday. But his number 1 comment that I've heard from him over the years, because he's also watched me for at least the last 7 years, is entrepreneurship is like some days you can pay cash for an Escalade, and the next day you don't even have enough money to buy a Subway sandwich. And that is the roller coaster of entrepreneurship. But if you quit when you're at the can't buy a Subway sandwich, guess what? You'll never afford the Escalade. You'll never afford the Subway sandwich. You always be on handouts and hoping that people do things for you. And when you can figure out how to keep going and push through that, all of a sudden you realize that your big problems are a lot smaller than you think.
What about dreams? What are after you build the entertainment business up in Kitsap County, are there any big dreams that you're trying to accomplish? And what connections do you need for that?
Yeah, so I would say the biggest dream that I have right now, I mean, they're all really, really big, but if I were to be successful in the entertainment sector and have the money and the capital and the network and stuff like that, there's two things that I want to do. One would be I want to build some sort of indoor water park up in the Kitsap area. One, it would change the
Indoor
Kitsap,
water park.
Indoor.
Yeah, so year round, right?
So I want it to be sunny and 78 degrees every 365 days a year up there, because we all know it's gray, it's cold, it's wet a lot of the year. And it's funny that I actually have a chart on my desk that shows the statistics of all the indoor water parks in America, all the water parks in America, how many of them are paired with a hotel part of it, how many of them are indoor, and how many of them are outdoor. And then really I think Washington has the fewest amount of water parks out of all states in the U.S. And they only have, they have like some county-owned, city-owned pool rec centers, which is just really like a swimming pool.
Yeah. Right, a glorified swimming pool.
It's just a glorified swimming pool,
slide,
right?
Yeah.
And the only water park would be like, I think, Great Wolf Lodge in Grand Mound. But it's expensive, and you got to go way down to Grand Mound to get to it. And even like we have Wild Waves, which is an hour south of here on I-5, but they're only open like 3 months out of the year.
And I've been to Wisconsin, like the Dells, so like they have multiple indoor water parks, and it's year round. They have the outdoor component, but the indoor ones do well like year round.
Yes. So if anybody thinks they can't accomplish something, the owner of Kalahari, I was doing a whole reading study on it. The owner of Kalahari over in, I think, Ohio, he started with doing beer deliveries to a bar that was failing, and then he bought the bar, grew that, built a pizza restaurant next door, grew that, and then got out of those businesses and then started his own indoor water park after a safari trip. That's where the name Kalahari came from. And after like 7 or I think this is like 8 years now that he's been open, he went from buying a failing bar and trying to piece it back together to now he owns $1 billion worth of water parks over in the Midwest.
Yeah, we've been to some of those in Wisconsin.
And so I read that and I say, if people are building the world around you, why can't you be the person building the world? Yeah. So I look at that story, and hopefully he sees my podcast. I'm gonna send this to him, and I'm gonna say, if you can do it, there's no reason why I can't change our area forever with a water park.
So what kind of connections do you need in order for your dream like that to happen?
So the water park,
or to get the ball rolling.
Yeah, the water park idea. I am trying to get on the calendar to go to some. I think it's IAAPI, which is it's like amusement and water parks convention expo. There's a whole industry, right? So you have the expos, the consultants, everybody comes to these events. What I really need to do is figure out feasibility, find a company that does feasibility. I've been doing a lot of studying to try to figure out the financial backing of that. How much money do I got to put together, or how do I find a private money investor that is going to fund that kind of idea? And then, of course, I think the easiest part is construction, because you just build to code, you have an engineer design it, but having a place to put it. And unfortunately, I know how things go is you can have a commercial area that'll sustain it. You can have all the money. You can have everything in the world, but somebody in politics says, no, we don't want it there. We want a flower store right there.
Yeah.
It's like, what? It's politics. Yeah. So that's not something that I'm excited to go through, is the political aspect of building businesses. But I also look around the world and I see the things that have been built, and I know that there's always a way, right?
So your dream is still the motivator at the end of the day.
Yes.
Just going back to something you said, because a lot of our previous guests have said the same thing, and it's kind of unlocked kind of their potential. But like mentorship, you mentioned mentors, and some entrepreneurs try to do it on their own, and they don't have that. But when in your entrepreneurial journey did you start having a mentor? Was it early on, and that's the trick or the key to having success early on, or was it recent when you started investing in like a mentor?
Yeah. So here's the thing: is when I grew up as a kid, I was a shy homeschooled church kid with no friends, adopted from another country. I was telling you this a little bit earlier. When I was homeschooled, so I didn't have a lot of social exposure, but through church and my neighborhood and stuff, I would say 95% of my friends, which are now, I consider them my mentors, were, if I was 12 years old, they were 65, 75, 85, and they were my best friends. And so those are the people that said, no, kid, you're holding the hammer wrong. Hold it this way. No, this is how this works. No, this is how we put a tire on a car. And I always have, like, I'll walk into a room and have a good conversation with somebody like Joe. I've just met him or something, which I haven't. I've known him for like 8 years now through BNI. But I just look at people and I just assume that, like, oh, this guy's smart and he wants to help me. So I don't ever walk in a room and go, oh man, that guy's so smart, I can't talk to him, which is how I grew up as a kid, being shy from everybody. But once I found my voice, I realized, like, the worst thing they can do is say, kick rocks, go ask somebody else, I don't have time for you, which has happened plenty in my life, right? But 95% of the time it's been, yeah, sure, what do you want to know? Like, oh yeah, do it this way. And don't ever tell them, like, oh, no, I think I know better than you. Just be like, wow, that's awesome. Okay, I'll take that information, and then ponder it later. So if you disagree with it, ponder it later, respect their time, and just take that time to ask the real questions, like, how did you do it? How do you start? Where do I come up with $5 million to start an idea? Ask the real questions.
No, that's pretty awesome. So,
Wealth of knowledge.
Wealth of knowledge.
Well, since you guys do know each other, the audience doesn't know. So, Joe, how do you guys know each other? Before we close.
Before we close?
Yeah.
So I met Noah 7 years ago or so in a BNI. BNI stands for Business Networking International. It's a global organization started by Ivan Meisner, who was also a guest on our podcast.
Yes, he was.
And here's this young kid, and he's working on tractors and diesel equipment and stuff, and he's just growing. He's asking questions. And so he is someone who wants to learn more so he can gain from the knowledge to improve himself, improve the lives of others around him. Mm-hmm. So that's why I thought that would be cool to have him on as a guest, because he's 31 years old. I thought I was 25.
31 next week.
Yeah, 31 next week. And so I was like, here's this young guy, serial entrepreneur, and there's people his age that are afraid to start a business. Right. So it's having the younger generation on the podcast as well, not just the ones that are 50, 60 years old and they're multimillionaires, but here's the one who's younger and they started and maybe they failed. So they started again and they failed again. So they're just using their failed moments to learn from so they can achieve their next goal.
Yeah, because it's cool to see that's a path too, that some people think you have to go to the corporate world first, and then start a business. Why can't you start it right away? So it's pretty cool, inspiring our audience that way, that, hey, if you have the dream, the passion, don't wait, start right now.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, how could people get in touch with you? Let's say for the entertainment, how can they get in touch with you? And if there's young entrepreneurs that have questions for you, or people that are looking to get into entrepreneurship, how they get in touch with you?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Facebook, Noah Anaker. Just say you saw it on Ask Valor Masterminds. Kitsap Mini Golf is a Facebook page. Kitsap Laserdome's Facebook page. Supercrosssuites.com is a Facebook page. Those are all different businesses that I have. And if you just name drop that you saw it on Ask Valor Masterminds and you wanted to ask some questions, I'm more than happy to talk to you on the phone or Zoom call or meet you in person.
That's pretty cool. Thanks for extending that offer. Yeah. So on behalf of our sponsors, Advanced Services, Fuse Networks, and our guests brought to you today by Warrior Injury Law.
Injured? Call us at 253-WARRIOR. Warrior Injury Law. Battle tested.
My name's Galen.
I'm Joe.
Coming at you from the creative underbelly of the Creative Block Studios in Seattle, Washington. Thank you, Noah, for being in studio.
Absolutely.
And thank you, everyone, for watching and tuning in to this episode of the Ask Valor Masterminds podcast. Thanks, everyone.
Make sure to hit the subscribe button.